योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचाम् मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर् गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम्. In the previous session, we had started on the Sutra 3.50. Tadvairāgyādapi doṣabījakṣaye kaivalyam. The sutra just before that had been about the sattva purusha anyata khyati matra. So about realizing the difference between the purest state of the antakaranam, the chitta, the inner instrument, the difference between the purest state of that and the purusha, and the siddhi arising from that, which was sarvabhavadhishthatritvam sarvajñātritvam. So, in some sense, complete lordship over each and everything and full knowledge, omniscience. We had already looked at that sutra and its bhashya in detail. And then we had come to Sutra 3.50 that says, having realized that, which is said to be the greatest form of knowledge, and attained those siddhis, which are highly exalted siddhis, the next thing for the yogi is to develop vairagya, detachment, disinterestedness with respect to even that exalted form of knowledge and the exalted siddhi. There we had said tadvairāgyādapi. So even that has to be given up, so to speak, by the yogi, which then leads to doṣabījakṣaye. So the dosha was the entire corpus of klesha, karma, vipaka, etc., samskara, vasanas, all of that, avidya. The seed of that is removed, is destroyed. And then what results from that is kaivalyam. Kaivalyam is the ultimate state of what is often referred to as liberation, or in the highest attainable in the Yoga Shastra, where the Purusha gets rid of all kinds of bondage with Prakriti and is established in its own state, without any, the sanyoga with Prakriti is removed. So that is said to be kaivalyam. And then there is no further sanyoga that comes about. So the Purusha is ever free of any kind of bondage. So that is tadvairāgyādapi doṣabījakṣaye kaivalyam. So this has come as Sutra 3.50, and we had some discussion on that in the previous session. Today we are going to look at the bhashya. Now the other thing here is, normally you would expect, as we had seen in the first two chapters, that the point of kaivalyam is usually the very last sutra of a given chapter, because that is the topmost point. Here that is not so. We are seeing kaivalyam coming at 3.50, while there are still some sutras to go. So that becomes a topic of consideration also. So a little bit about that. So the prakaranam that is going on here, or the overall topic, is one of sanyamas and siddhis. So here it is said, why did kaivalya get introduced at this point? So now the prakaranam is about vibhutis, the sanyamas and the siddhi. So it is said that this point is brought here, the one about kaivalya, to point out that the previous sanyama, or the previous combination of sattva purusha anyata khyati and sarvadhishthatritvam and sarvajñatritvam as the siddhi, is the greatest among all the sanyamas discussed in this prakaranam, because that directly leads to kaivalya when the vairagya for that is developed. So the direct connection between the sanyama of the previous sutra and the next step, which is kaivalya, which comes after the paravairagya, in order to establish that, is the reason why Patanjali introduced kaivalyam here. So it is sanyamantaranam purusharthabhasa phalatvat vivekakhyati sanyamasya purushartatam darshayitum vivekakhyateh paravairagyopajanana dvarena kaivalyam phalam aha. So that is what has been described by Vachaspati Mishra. He says the other sanyamas, sanyamantaranam purushartha abhasa phalatvat. So there are siddhis and so on, but it is not the real true ultimate purushartha, not the ultimate attainable. However, vivekakhyati sanyamasya, of the sanyama about the vivekakhyati, which was seen in the previous sutra, purushartatam darshayitum, to show the direct purushartata, that particular sanyama of vivekakhyati is in fact a legitimate proper purushartha, because it is on the direct path to the ultimate goal, which is kaivalyam. Whereas all the other sanyamas, if properly followed in the right sequence, in the right ladder of sanyamas and samadhi, will take the yogi forward, but that is not of the stature of being a purushartha. Whereas vivekakhyati sanyama is of the nature of purushartha. And in order to show that, so purusharthatam darshayitum vivekakhyate paravairagyopajanana dvarena. So this vivekakhyati can turn into kaivalya. How? By the development of paravairagya. So paravairagya upajanana dvarena. So the vivekakhyati of the previous sutra leads to the final purushartha of kaivalyam through the path of paravairagya, or by the means of paravairagya. And in order to show that, he says, Patanjali introduced kaivalyam here, while we are not yet at the complete end of the chapter. But in the context of the prakaranam of sanyamas, this had to be shown that the sanyama of vivekakhyati is the real, or the very much of the stature of purushartha, because that leads to kaivalyam. So wanted to set that context before we begin looking at Vyasa's Bhashya.
So the 58th sutra is a Kaivalya sutra, and you just now heard that explanation that although the text is not ending, the Kaivalyam gets mentioned. So, obvious question as to why the Kaivalya has been mentioned, and you heard the clarification for it, which comes in Vachaspati Mishra's text. And the sutra meaning tadvairāgyādapi means the final samyama on sattva purusha anyata khyati, that is viveka khyati, and the result thereof, by having renunciation for all the three. And you should recall, while asamprajñat samadhi was described. The last vritti restraint was mentioned, viram pratyaya kind of thing. And that is viveka khyati. That's the last chitta vritti in the path of, or in the journey towards kaivalya. That's the exalted chitta vritti. And when that too is given up, that is given up because of paravairagya. And when the asampragnat samadhi comes up. So, tadvairāgyādapi predicate here is to be understood in the light of asmita samadhi and its transition into asampragnat samadhi. And you heard that the kaivalya has been mentioned because this is the supreme kind of siddhi, which is on sattva-purusha anyata khyati itself. Then second, the another thing that should be noted, that the kaivalya has different dimensions. The Kaivalya Sutras have come more often than once, as might be expected. It should come at the end of the text as the last sutra. It has come more often. So different dimensions are also provided for the seeker to understand the Kaivalya. And this is one of those dimensions. Because Kaivalya Sutra will be repeated again at the end of this chapter. And again, the Kaivalya Sutra will come in the 4th chapter. And the Kaivalya Sutra has already come in 2nd chapter to describe the Hanam, Hanopaya, and Hanam. So different dimensions of Kaivalya would be available for a keen student. So this is one of the dimensions that we get here, that the supreme siddhi of the nature of what was mentioned in the previous sutra, and the very samyama itself, viveka khyati, having been given up, restrained, the kaivalya comes up. Why? Because doṣabījakṣaye. Doṣabīja means primarily avidya, as you heard just now. Avidya is the seed of all vasanas, karma vasanas, klesha vasanas, and whatever other vasanas which are there in the human embodiment. So they all come to an end. And that is why the very bija, the seed of dosha, is neutralized. And therefore, the kaivalya comes up. So that is what the sutra is mentioning. Okay.
Now Vyasa provides the explanation. He says, Yada asya evam bhavati klesha karma kshaye sattvasya ayam viveka pratyayo dharmaha sattvam cha heya pakshe nyastam purushascha aparinami shuddho anyah sattvat iti. So he says, Vyasa explains, he says, Yada asya evam bhavati klesha karma kshaye. So when the yogi comes to this point where he has attained the knowledge, the viveka khyati knowledge of the previous sutra, then with the klesha and the karma are their kshaya takes place, so they get destroyed, they get removed, they get ridden off because of the vairagya, the detachment being developed. Then the sattvasya ayam viveka pratyayo dharmaha. So the antakaranam or the chitta, the buddhi, gets this knowledge. Pratyaya means jnanam. So what is the type of knowledge? That of the ultimate viveka between purusha and the purest form of the chitta. So that is its nature, its characteristic. So that is dharma. So viveka pratyayo dharmaha. Then sattvam cha heya pakshe nyastam. At that point, when the difference is seen, then the sattvam, that is the chitta in its purest form, the buddhi sattva, is categorized, and classified as heyam. Heyam means something that has to be gotten rid of. So heya pakshe, on the side of something, on the side of things that should be gotten rid of, it gets classified. So heya pakshe nyastam. So it is put in the point that this is something that is not to be desired, to be gotten rid of. So that is sort of how the vairagya is getting developed, and also the result of that vairagya, that the bodhisattva, even in its purest form, is understood and then classified as something that is not to be desired, that is to be gotten rid of. So heya paksha. So that is where it gets classified. On the other hand, purushascha aparinami. So the purusha, the unchanging purusha, aparinami, is sort of a describing word for the purusha here from the very formation of the Sanskrit sentence. So the purusha is described as aparinami, ever unchanging. Shuddhaha, pure. So pure and unchanging means ever pure, because if it's pure at any one time, because it is unchanging, it is pure forever. So purushascha aparinami, shuddhaha, anyaha, different, satvat. It is different from the bodhisattva, and the bodhisattva then is classified and compartmentalized as something to be gotten rid of. So heya pakshe nyastam, deposited as something, and compartmentalized as something to be gotten rid of. And the purusha is recognized as ever pure, unchanging, and different. Anyaha sattvat means different from this bodhisattva. So that kind of understanding and then the detachment for bodhisattva develops. Evam asya tataha virajyamanasya यानि क्लेश बीजानि दग्धशाली बीज कल्प अन्य प्रसव समर्थानि तानि दग्धशाली बीज कल्पानि अप्रसव समर्थानि तानि सह मनसा प्रत्यस्तं गच्छन्ति. So in this manner, evam, asya, of this yogi, tataha, as a result of this, virajyamanasya. Virajyamanasya means the yogi who is becoming detached. Virajyamanaha means one who is developing vairagya. So virajyamanaha, vairagya, etc., they are coming from the same root, vi and raj. So this is sort of in one way to understand is it is like a continuous present tense, where virajyamanaha means who is developing this vairagya, getting more vairagya with respect to that. Now of this yogi, yani klesha bijani, whatever seeds of kleshas, those dagda shali bija kalpani. So it is like they get similar to burnt seeds. In what way? Dagdashali bija kalpani aprasava samarthani means they are not prasava samartha. They don't have the capability to sprout anymore. So a seed when burnt cannot bring forth a sapling. Similarly, the klesha bija here gets into that burnt form so that it cannot generate any more kleshas. And therefore, tani sahamanasa, those seeds which are now or in a burnt state, sahamanasa, so manasa saha, along with the manas, pratyastam gacchanti, they sort of dissolve. So this is the opposite of the transformation which we have been calling evolution of Prakriti. We have been saying that from the Pradhana Prakriti comes Mahat, then Ankara, etc., etc. So in the reverse, they go back into Prakriti. So in this case, when the Manas, the Chitta is dissolving back into Prakriti, along with that, the point is being made, whatever seeds that were of the form of say samskaras or vasana, which were then turning into kleshas like avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha. So those seeds have now been rendered incapable of sprouting. By what process? By viveka followed by detachment, even with respect to the knowledge of viveka and the siddhis, and by compartmentalizing the bodhisattva as something to be gotten rid of. Once the yogi comes to that point, then the klesha bijas become burnt. And then, as the chitta is dissolving back into prakriti, these seeds, and this we have seen in detail in the first chapter as well. Because what the question that arises even in the second chapter is, what happens to these kleshas? Because kleshas exist, what will happen to them? So there it is answered that along with when the chitta dissolves back into prakriti, these kleshas which are in the burned seed state, they also dissolve back. So sahamanasa pratyastam gachanti. Teshu pralineshu purushaha punaridam tapatrayam nabhunte. So one may wonder that okay, the chitta has dissolved, but what is to prevent again the bondage to arise, again the chitta to arise, etc. So it is clarified that once that has happened, once the seeds of the kleshas have gotten dissolved, so that their form itself doesn't exist, that has become now the common matter of prakriti. Their particular pattern or form in the form of chitta, in the form of klesha bija, etc. doesn't exist anymore. Once that has happened, then this purusha will never again have to undergo the tapatraya. The tapatraya, again something that we have seen, the three types of tapa, adibhautika, adhyatmika, adidaivika, etc. So, and I mean what those mean that we have seen already, so we won't go over that now. But na bhunte, will never have to undergo, will never have to experience. The purusha, so to speak, is ever free of this kind of bondage. Tad etesham gunanam manasi karma klesha vipaka swarupena abhivyaktanam charitarthanam pratiprasave purushasya atyantiko gunaviyogaha kaivalyam. So what is kaivalyam? So that is what now Vyasa is saying. He's saying, okay, we use the term kaivalyam, but what is this kaivalyam? He says that etesham gunanam. Says of these gunas. Which gunas? The sattva, raja, tama gunas. What about them? So gunas, not general gunas in general. The specific form of gunas. Which form? Manasi karma klesha vipaka swarupena abhivyaktana. The gunas that have manifested in the manas, in the chitta, in the form of karma klesha vipaka. So the gunas that had manifested in the chitta as karma, klesha and vipaka, that whole cycle that we have seen, the klesha, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, leading to actions, karma, and then their fruition and the seeds of that whole manifestation of the gunas. Since everything is made up of gunas, everything is a manifestation of that gunas. So that particular manifestation of the gunas, what has happened? Charitarthanam. Their purpose has been accomplished at this point. Because again we had seen bhoga apavargartham drishyam. The whole purpose is for the experience of the purusha. So that also has been accomplished. So they are referred to as charitartha. So with respect to that gunas, pratiprasave. So when those gunas have gone back, they had manifested in this certain specific form of kesha, karma, vipaka. Now they are charitartha. Their purpose is accomplished. So when they dissolve back, so that is pratiprasave, purushasya atyantiko guna viyogaha. So when they get dissolved, the complete separation, atyantiko means something that has happened completely and is never going to happen again. So what? The guna viyoga, separation from the gunas. So the permanent guna viyoga, that is atyantiko guna viyoga, permanent separation from the gunas, that particular condition of the purusha is known as kaivalyam. So Vyasa here has exactly sort of specified what the term kaivalyam in the sutra means. He has specified that by saying tad etesham gunanam manasi karma klesha vipaka swarupena abhivyaktanam charitarthanam प्रतिप्रसवे पुरुषस्य आत्यन्तिको गुणवियोगः कैवल्यम्. Then what? He says tada, in that state, swarupa pratishtha chitishaktireva purusha iti. So now again a doubt may arise, okay, then what about the purusha at that point? Is it there? Is it going to go away? What about it? So in that state, tada, swarupa pratishtha, being established in its own form without any bondage, so that is implied, that without any bondage, without any connection with the prakriti. So swarupa pratishtha chiti shakti reva. So at that point the purusha is purely chiti shakti only. Now even otherwise purusha is chiti shakti eva. However, there is this sanyoga, the connection with the prakriti. Now that has gone away, so it is swarupa pratishtha chiti shakti. The Swarupa Pratishtha is again a characterizing term for the Chitti Shakti by the very Sanskrit construction. So it is like an adjective. It is a describing word for Chitti Shakti. So what kind of Chitti Shakti? Swarupa Pratishtha Chitti Shakti eva. That is Purusha in that condition. So if one were to ask how is the Purusha in the condition of Kaivalyam, then the answer would be Swarupa Pratishtha Chitti Shakti eva. So that is the state of Purusha. So here Vyasa has explained to us how one transitions from the state of the Viveka Khyati into the state of Kaivalyam. What does the term Kaivalyam mean, and what is the condition of the Purusha in Kaivalyam? So that completes Sutra 3.50 and its Bhashya.
So, a couple of doubts come in the mind of a seeker that the supreme siddhi has been mentioned, and that too the viveka khyati and the consequence thereof, and the form of siddhi. Now, if that is the supreme thing, why it has to be given up? Why it is given up? Why it is mentioned to be given up? So Vyasa explains that after all it is Viveka Khyati, Sattva Purushanyata Khyati, which is the pinnacle point of Sattva Guna in a yogi. Now, we all are trying to respect Sattva Guna in whatever way possible, and we are going almost with some obsession for Sattva Guna, because we know it is to be acquired, it is to be attained, it is to be stacked up, and this is what happens in a formative period for seekers. The Sattva Guna, it becomes very, very coveted, and it should be coveted. It must be coveted. It is coveted. There is nothing wrong about it. But Sattva Guna is, after all, a Prakriti Guna. It is Prakriti. And Prakriti finally is Heya Paksha, that is, which is discardable and not acceptable. It is not Upadeya, but Heya, because it is Prakriti. Now, the Sattva Purusha Anata Khyati is distinction between the Sattva and Purusha, and it comes about by exalted Sattva Guna in the Chitta. Now, if that is to be restrained for even Asapungna Samadhi or for Kaivalya, it should be given up. Basically because it is Sattva Guna, and Sattva Guna is in the Heya Paksha according to ontology. So Vyasa makes it clear, Heya Pakshe Nyastam. The Sattva Guna is Heya Paksha, and therefore we are little amazed and we are taken aback Because we are going after Sattva-guna, we should go after Sattva-guna with even some amount of obsession and craze. Otherwise, we will not be able to get Sattva-guna, which is otherwise a very rare aspect to be getting. There is scarcity for us to be getting it. But for that samadhi, the asaprajña samadhi and kaivalya, they are heya paksha. And that is realized by a yogi. A yogi only knows it. So Sattva-guna is heya paksha only for a yogi, primarily, as is not the case with we commoners. And therefore, that is the basis of vairāgya for that. So that tadvairāgyādapi, that is, it is vairāgya for the sattva-purusha-khyati and the siddhi thereof. So he mentions the basis for vairāgya here. Otherwise, we won't understand the basis for vairāgya. We think it is highly coveted. So Vyasa makes it clear. And with his involvement to that plane, yogi will be working on klesha management. His kleshas are attenuated progressively. And then the kleshas are also taken to burnt seed stage, as you saw in the Sutra, doṣabījakṣaye. And doṣabījakṣaye means, Vyasa explains it, it is klesha bijani dagdashadi bijakalpani. And therefore, those would become aprasamarthani, that there will be no sprout thereof. And therefore, there will be final dissolution of the chitta into the prakriti, and that would open out the possibility of kaivalya or isolation from prakriti. And once that happens, then again there won't be tapatraya. So that means there is no bondage. Now this, the gunas working here for a yogi, and which are given up, it is with reference to mind. Therefore it says karma klesha vipaka swarupena. Otherwise the three gunas are also in the embodiment. They are there also in body matter. But primarily they should be gotten rid of from the very psyche and consciousness. So the gunas, which are now charitartha, charitadhikara, first of all, they get rid from the chitta and not from the body, from the chitta. Having got rid from in the chitta itself, later it will reflect on body and the gunas will be totally gone away. But first they have to go away from the chitta. Their occupancy in the chitta, their governance over chitta, their adhikara over chitta, that is managed in kaivalya process. So that he makes it clear that the gunas are first managed in very chitta. And then, therefore, when the gunas are totally isolated and Purusha is isolated from gunas, the Purusha Tattva establishes Swarupa Pratishtha, which is characteristic signature condition of the Kaivalya. So you should know that in Asamprajña Samadhi there is Swarupavasthiti, Tada Swarupe Avasthanam, if you recall the first chapter. Now in Kaivalya it is Swarupa Pratishtha, that means getting established. And that's how the Kaivalya takes place. So one of the dimensions of Kaivalya gets mentioned here, which is opened out by Vyasa in his comment. Okay.
So now we move on to the next sutra. The next sutra has a long bhashya, so we'll cover as much as we can today. So now we are at Sutra 3.51. Sthānyupanimantraṇe saṅgasmayākaraṇaṃ punaraniṣṭaprasaṅgāt. So this is another interesting sutra. So sthānyupanimantraṇe, that is the first term. So what does that mean? So it is clarified as sthāninaha mahendradayah. So who are these sthanis? Who are these sthaninaha? They are mahendradayah, like people or deities like Indra. That is, as we had seen earlier in the overall scheme, there are several lokas. There are various types of deities residing in different lokas, and there is the superintendent deity of different lokas. So Indra is said to be the king of gods, as a deity. So that is a position, and the Mahendra holds that position, and so on. So these are the deities who preside over the respective lokas, and those lokas are capable of providing certain exalted bhogas, experiences. So such presiding deities are known as sthaninaha. So now, the sthaninaha is a plural form. Sthani is a singular form. Sthānyupanimantraṇe. So, upanimantranam is sort of an offer or an invitation. So, on receiving offers and invitations from presiding deities, then in that case, saṅgasmayākaraṇaṃ. So that is saṅgasmayākaraṇaṃ. Saṅgaha means saktihi, attachment, development of desire. Smaya means garva, or a certain abhimana, a certain type of pride. So not doing that, akaranam. So when offers and invitations are received from presiding deities holding certain celestial positions, attachment and pride is not to be developed. Why? Punaraniṣṭaprasaṅgāt. Because that again leads to unfavorable circumstances. That is what the sutra says. And the Bhashya will make it clear to us what this means. But let us once again understand the sutra. The sutra says, with respect to a yogi, that in case of offers and invitation from presiding celestial deities, the attachment to that or pride about receiving that or those offers and invitations is not to be done, because that would lead to unfavorable circumstances. Of course, unfavorable with respect to the path of yoga. So, sthānyupanimantraṇe saṅgasmayākaraṇaṃ punaha aniṣṭaprasaṅgāt. So that is Sutra 3.51. Now, let us look at what Vyasa says, so that we get some context of why all this is being said. So Vyasa begins by saying, Chatvaraha khalu ami yoginaha. Says, okay, this is in the context of 4 types of yogis, or 4 stages of yogis. So which are those? Prathama kalpikaha, that is 1. Madhubhumikaha, that is 2nd. Prajñājyotihi, that is the 3rd. Atikranta bhavaniyaha, that is the 4th. So Prathama kalpiko, Madhubhumikaha, Prajñājyotihi, Atikranta bhavaniyashcheti. So these are the 4 kinds of yogis in question at this time. Now Vyasa will tell us what are these 4 categories or 4 stages. So he says, Tatra abhyasi pravrittamatra jyotihi pratamaha. So he talks about the first category, which is known as Prathama Kalpika. And the way he says is, the Prathama Kalpika, he is a Abhyasi, means one who is immersed in the Abhyasa, the study or the developing the sadhana of yoga. Pravrittamatra Jyotihi. What does that mean? So that is elaborated in different texts as Pravrittamatram natu nishpanna jyotirjnanam yasya satatha. And elsewhere, Pravrittamatram na punarvashikrutam jyotirjnanam parachittadi vishayam yasya satatha. So this is a yogi, the first category, Prathama Kalpikaha, is one who is Abhyasi, who is sort of Abhyasa means Punav Paunyena Karane. So he is completely engaged in the various things involved in yoga. But who is a Pravritti Matra Jyotihi, means he has had a glimpse of the siddhis of yoga, but he doesn't have those under his control. Those are not established. So as part of his Abhyasa, he gets a glimpse of the various siddhis pertaining to yoga. However, that has not been established to an extent that he can hold it, he can bring it when he wants it, etc. So that is why it is not a Vashikritam. So he is at a level where he has developed his yoga sadhana to an extent that he is able to glimpse the siddhis. He has attained that understanding of what the jnanam is. However, the jnanam is not established in him. The siddhis are not yet established in him. That is why it is called Pravrittamatra Jyotihi. So that is the first category. With the term for that first category is Prathama Kalpika. Now the next one, Madhubhumikaha. So that is, Vyasa describes it as Rutambara Prajño Dvitiyaha. So Rutambara Prajña we had seen in the first chapter, Sutra 1.48, Rutambara Tatra Prajña. So here, Rutambara Prajña Dvitiyaha. So what is this Rutambara Prajña here? In this context, it is the second category of a yogi is able to attain the prajna or the state of cognition which is full of Ritam. Ritam is the eternal truth. So essentially he is able to develop the essential and complete understanding, sakshatkara, and that kind of prajna of his dheya vastu, whatever is the sanyama that is happening in his case. He has reached a stage where the complete prajna, the complete understanding, full of Ritam, is available to him. And he has mastered it so that he can bring that about through the yogic techniques as and when he is in the state of that Sanyama. So that is the second category known as Madhubhumikaha. It says Ritambara Prajño Dvitiyaha. Now the third, Bhutendriyajayi Trutiyaha. Sarveshu Bhaviteshu Bhavaniyeshu Krutarakshabandaha Krutakartavya Sadhanadiman. So that is the description of the third. The term was Prajna Jyotihi for the third category, and the elaboration is Bhutendriya Jayi. So one who has attained the Bhuta Jaya and Indriya Jaya, which we had seen in the recent sutras in the last few sessions. And we had seen what it involves, the five aspects on which Sanyama has to be done, and what are the siddhis. We have seen that in detail. So that is the third. And the great amount of siddhis and even Pradhana Jaya arising from Bhuta Jaya and Indriya Jaya. So this is a very exalted level of Sanyama, and the siddhis are of a very high caliber. So Bhutendriya Jayi Tritiyaha. So what about him? Sarveshu Bhaviteshu Bhavaniyeshu. So whatever has been the topic of his Sanyama or the Dheya Vastu, and whatever should be or whatever is possible. So that is bhavaniya. Bhavita is whatever has been performed. Bhavaniya is whatever is capable of being an object of Sanyama or whatever is suitable for being an object of Sanyama. On all of those, Krita Bandhaha means he has done a Bhumika Samrakshana Bandhaha. So that stage, that Sanyam and Siddhi, he has attained. Not only attained, he has Krita means he has attained and understood, tied it in or protected it in such a way that it has not gone away from him. So he can attain it when he needs to. Whatever has been attained has been kept with him, guarded, and not allowed to be slipped away. So that is Kritaraksha Bandhaha. So essentially, the third category is a very high level of category which has already Bhuta Jaya, Indriya Jaya, and whatever can be a topic of or an object of Sanyama that has been attained and held. So Kritaraksha Bandhaha. Krita Kartavya Sadhanadiman. So whatever sadhana has to be incorporated has been incorporated completely, and he has all of that within all of those capabilities within him. That is the third category of yogi, known as Prajna Jyotihi. So we have seen the three, Pratama Kalpikaha, Madhubhumikaha, and Prajna Jyotihi. Now the fourth, Chaturthaha, Yastu Atikranta Bhavaniyaha Tasya Chitta Pratisarga Eko Arthaha Saptavidasya Pranta Bhumi Prajna. So now the fourth is even beyond that. Why? Yastu, he is of the type, or he is of the category who has Atikranta Bhavaniyaha. So the Bhavaniya or Bhavita, etc., refers to the bringing about the object of Dhyanam. And we have talked about Bhavanam a few times, even Vitarka Badane, Pratipaksha Bhavanam, etc. So the term Bhavanam is very interesting. Sometimes it is described as a creative contemplation, which is not very accurate, but gives a flavor. So essentially, bringing about the alambanam, support, or the whatever is to be meditated upon, if we were to loosely use the word meditation, whatever is the dhyaya vastu, bringing that about, establishing dharana, dhyana, and then samadhi on that. So that process is called bhavanam. So now, this yogi, the fourth, is atikranta bhavaniya. So whatever has to be the dhyaya vastu, he has surpassed that. He has transcended that. So this fourth type is beyond that. So he is at a level where it is not the Sanyama that is of interest. It is the Vairagya on the Sanyama. He has developed the Vairagya that we saw in the previous sutra. So he is not looking for any type of complete understanding, Sakshatkara, Sanyama, or Siddhi. He has gone beyond that. So that is Atikranta Bhavaniya. So then what is his purpose? His sole purpose, Eko Artha, is Chitta Pratisargaha. He wants to have the Chitta, his Chitta, get dissolved into Prakriti, which means the only object that remains is the Virama Pratyaya, not attaining Samadhi, but now Samadhi is very much in his capabilities. It is the detachment from Samadhi and attaining the asamprajñāta state, higher and higher and longer levels of the asamprajñāta state, so that the chitta can completely dissolve back into the prakriti, and then he gets kaivalyam. That is his condition of the fourth category. So this is the fourth category, is beyond all the sanyamas and siddhis and get completely detached from those. So that fourth category is known as Atikranta Bhavaniya Yogi. And what does Vyasa say about him? He says Saptavidasya Pranta Bhumi Prajna. So that is a reference back to Sutra 2.27, if you remember. Tasya Saptada Pranta Bhumi Prajna. And that is also very interesting because there is a sevenfold prajna that is mentioned there. Parignatam heyam nasya punah parigneyam asti. Kshina heya hetavo na puvanarete kshetavayam asti, etc. So there are 7 listed, and we have described that in detail in the context of Sutra 2.27. But you can see the coherence in the text, where at this stage in the 3rd chapter, very briefly, there is a cross-reference back to the previous sutras. We saw the Rutambara, now we are seeing the Saptada Pranta Bhumi. So at this stage, of the 7, if you look at the last one, for example, Etasyam avasthayam gunasambandhatitaha swarupamatra jyotihi. So that is how it was described in Sutra 2.27, where in this state, Etasyam avasthayam gunasambandhatitaha, all the connection with the gunas, which means all the connections with gunas in their raw form, with Prakriti, has been transcended. Gunasambandhatitaha. Swarupamatra jyotihi, who is in his own form alone. Amalaha kevali purusha. So that same thing is referenced here. Saptavida asya pranta bhumi prajna. So Vyasa begins by saying there are these 4 types of yogi. Now, after this, we will talk about what this sthānyupanimantraṇe means and how does this fit in. But at this point, let us recognize that there are these 4 types of yogis. That is the context for this sutra, and the details of this, the topic of this sutra, which is the Upanimantranam, we can see that in the next session.
So sthānyupanimantraṇe, sthāni means, as you heard, the celestial planes. There are those planes above the bhum, the 7 planes above us. So there are deities on various planes, different deities on different planes, celestial planes. Now, they have reason to envy this yogi, because the yogi is becoming a Siddha Purusha. He is acquiring so many siddhis. And now we have seen the ultimate culminating siddhi as well. And therefore they say he is almost reached the goal post. And therefore he is actually, for devatas and the deities, they see that he is almost a competitor for them, because he would be getting a deityship. And therefore they try to entice him. They give him invitations. And now this is such a predicament for a yogi that he is not in a position to accept it nor reject it. And that you will see later why, how that predicament is. But the thing is that they envy him because of his attainment, and he is almost about to get godly, the deityship, devatvam. And therefore these devatas, devatas, Mahendradi, etc., Indra, etc., they have a challenge here. And therefore they want to entice him. They give him invitations. Now, why is that they are enticing him? Because Vyasa makes it clear that yogi, after having attained the supreme siddhi, he still is on a progressive trend. Because it happens that sometimes we can get complacency and we may not make further pursuit. But Vyasa clearly mentions that he is still in pursuance. Although he has attained the supreme most siddhi, he still is pursuing. And what is he pursuing? He is pursuing the ultimate purushartha, kaivalyam. So he is still not relenting. They see that he is not still relenting. And therefore, they take this measure. So that's why the devatas are extending invitations. That is one of the reasons why. And then it would be anishtha, either accepting it or rejecting it. Both is going to be anishtha, undesirable. Anyway, the point is that these yogis are of 4 planes, and this is the topic that we are discussing at the moment. So Vyasa mentions the Prathama Kalpika. Prathamakalpika means one who is in the Sañyamabhyasa. We should not think that if we are commencing our yoga abhyasa, we are Prathamakalpika. Prathamakalpika means Abhyasi Pravrittamatra Jyotihi Prathamaha, which means Sañyamabhyasa. We are not in Samyamabhyasa. We are trying to reach a level of yoga abhyasa that we will be able to do abhyasa of yoga. Where is accomplished in samadhi, and therefore he is Sañyama Abhyasi. That is the first plane. It is not neophyte. It is not a beginner. It is not the first rung of the yoga. But it is first rung in essential yoga, quintessential yoga. And the second one is Rutambhara Pragnya Prapta. And we don't have to discuss this. We have done it in the first chapter, Rutambhara Pragnya. So that is the second plane. And the third plane is Bhutendriyajayi. These are glorious siddhis. We just recently considered them. Bhutajaya and Indriyajaya, which ends into Pradhanajaya, and the ultimate siddhi in the realm of Prakriti, the Kriya Siddhi aspect. So, that is the third plane, Bhutendriyajayi. And the fourth plane is Atikrant Bhavaniya. That means he is still pursuing after that all those Jnana Siddhis and Kriya Rupa Siddhis, Jnana Rupa Siddhis and Kriya Rupa Siddhis. There is nothing to be attained insofar as Jnana Rupa Siddhi and Kriya Rupa Siddhi is concerned, but yet he is pursuing, he is not relenting, because he is Kaivalya Pragbhara, he is proceeding towards the ultimate Purushartha, and therefore he is not relenting. And because he is not relenting, the celestial deities do what they feel like doing. And that is what is being mentioned. So basically, these four bhumis get described, which on earlier occasion we talked about it and they said this will be discussed later. So here Vyasa tells us about these four planes, and this is the important aspect in the theory of yoga for us to understand that yogis also have rungs, and there are four planes, and these are the four planes. And it was explained to you what is Atikranta Bhavaniya, etc., Bhaviteshu, Bhaviniyeshu, etc. And Kritaraksha Bandha, he also ensures that whatever has been attained will not slip away, like sand held in hand cannot be held forever. It slips away. Now, yogi ensures that nothing is slipped away, will be slipping away, and that is why the devatas envy him. That he has reached the pinnacle point of glories, Aishwaryam, but yet he is not relenting. And that is why they are provoked to do what they are said to be doing here. So that's the interesting material that has come here, that even a yogi on the highest plane has a predicament. Of course, his predicament is altogether totally different. And the certain things get mentioned, reiterated, such as Sapta Vidha Pranta Bhumi, which was discussed in Viveka Khyati topic, second chapter. Rutambhara Pragnya, which was discussed in the first chapter. So, we are again shown the link, how the whole text is linked with each other insofar as the topics are coming up. So with that, Vyasa tells us about the four bhumis. Now he will tell us about, as you heard, what is this reason for extending invitations, and what is the predicament. Either ways, it is a difficulty to say yes and nod the head and accept the invitation is also a downfall, and not accepting also is a downfall. That's the predicament, and it's an interesting topic that is going to come up. Okay.
So we'll stop here for today and continue on the Vyasa's Bhashya on 3.51 in the next session. So let's recite the shlokas on Guruji and stop for today. वैज्ञानिकं प्रवक्तृत्व आसनेषु कलाविदं योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञं वन्देऽहं सुन्दरं गुरुं योगवृक्षो हि लोकेऽस्मिन् यत्प्रेरणेन वर्धितः योगाचार्य गुरो तुभ्यं सुन्दराय नमो नमः. Thank you.
Namaskar all of you.